بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, welcome everyone to the Mihrab Foundation and ICUB Halakha class in the 40 Hadith Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. Inshallah, we will be studying this book, which is the 40 Hadith of Imam Nawawi, and the commentary is by Shaykh Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, rahimahullah ta'ala, and we are now on the 11th Hadith, inshallah, which is on page 64. Inshallah, page 64. So, this is actually the 12th Hadith, mashallah. So, leaving that which does not concern one. And here he says, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه رواه الترمذي وابن ماجه. On the authority, the translation of the hadith we just read is on the authority of Abu Hurairah, may God be pleased with him, who reported that the messenger of God, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, of the signs of perfection of a person's Islam is that he leaves or she leaves that which does not concern him. This is narrated by Imam Tirmidhi. So this is hadith that comes from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, and the reason why he is named Abu Hurairah is because he used to love cats, and the name for a cat is Hir, and Hurairah is like a small cat, right? So the one of cats, the one of small cats. Abu in the Arabic language doesn't always mean father. Sometimes it means the one of, or the person who is known for this. And so Abu Hurairah is not because he had a child named Hurairah, it's because he loved cats, and Hurairah is a small cat, right? Similarly, Abu Bakr, he doesn't have his son is Abdullah, and Abdurrahman he didn't have a son named Bakr, but he was known for that. So this is how the Arabs use a lot of the terminology. So Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, who was somebody who would just memorize hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and then tell the community, teach the community. He is the largest hadith narrator in Islam. He's number one. Narrates, I believe, over 5,000 hadiths. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, his full-time job was just to memorize hadith and teach and narrate those hadiths. A lot of times he was hungry. A lot of times he was poor, and he didn't have like the businesses and the markets and this and that some of the other Sahaba had, but rather he focused on spreading the religion and the narrations of the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there were business men and women in Medina, in Mecca, in Medina, but you also had people like Abu Hurairah who would specialize in teaching and learning and teaching. So alhamdulillah, he says this saying was narrated by Ibn Qura, by Qura ibn Abdul Rahman, from Az-Zuhri, from Abu Salama, from Abu Hurairah. He had authenticated all his chains of transmission. He said about this prophetic saying, this is the speech of that condenses many precious meanings in a few words. A similar saying which is pregnant with many meanings despite its few words is that which was reported by Abu Dhar, who said, whoever considers his speech to be part of his works will speak very little except that which concerns him, except about which that concerns him. So obviously the meaning is very sound, has a lot of depth for a short worded hadith. So one of the gifts the Prophet Muhammad was given, he says, Utitu Jawam al-Kalimi. I was given comprehensive language, comprehensive meaning. And so the Prophet Muhammad many times would use a short sentence that had many profound meanings to that short sentence. This hadith is one of them, as the scholars say. Another thing he was given, Jul al-Ardli, masjidan wa tahiran wa masjidan. The earth was made for me as a masjid, a place of prayer, and pure. In the previous ummahs, they had to go to an actual masjid to pray. Right? The Prophet Muhammad saying the earth was made for me pure and as a masjid, in that you can pray outside, you can pray on the street, you can pray wherever you are able to pray, and it doesn't necessarily have to be only a masjid. So he was given these things, and the Prophet Muhammad he says, "Min husn Islam al-mar tarku ma la ya'ni." From the beautiful things about Islam is a person leaves that which does not concern him or her. And this is really important for us to understand that in Islam, if something does not concern us directly or our families, it's better to leave it than to engage in that. Because one, it will waste time and it has nothing to do with us, and it usually will lead to gossip, ghiba and namima. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about ghiba, backbiting, and namima, slander. He says, La tajassasu, do not spy on one another. Okay, so it's somebody concerned with something they're not involved in directly. They're going to spy or eavesdrop, listen to what other people are saying when it has nothing to do with you. So, La tajassasu, do not spy. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا يَخْتَى بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا, and do not backbite some of you to others. And what is the definition of ghiba? As our Prophet Muhammad has defined, he says, ذِكْرَ أَخَاكَ or ذِكْرَ أَخِيكَ بِمَا يَكْرَهُ, mentioning your brother or your sister in Islam in a way that they dislike. So if we mention something about our brothers and sisters behind their back, they're not there, in a way they dislike us to mention about them, that is the definition of ghiba. And ghiba is a sin, it is haram. Some scholars say it is a minor sin, and if you do ghiba on the people of knowledge, like the ulama, it's considered a major sin. Okay? So in this sense, Allah describes it as what? He says, "La yakhta ba'dukum ba'da," some of you shall not backbite others. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "La yakhta ba'dukum ba'da, ayuhibbu ahadakum an ya'kala lahma akhi maytan fakarihtamuh." Yani, would you like any one of you to eat the dead flesh of your brother? For truly you would dislike it. You would dislike that. Why does Allah compare ghiba, backbiting, to eating the dead flesh of your brother or your sister in Islam? Why? Because they can't defend themselves. If I am trash talking or mocking or making fun of my brother in Islam in a way that he dislikes behind his back, he's not here to defend himself. So it's as if I'm eating his dead body. Why? Because the dead body can't defend itself, it's dead. And then you're just going to pick apart the dead body. That's like ghiba. Okay? Because there's nobody there. It's different when they're there. That's actually not considered ghiba. The person may not like you to say it, but they're there. Okay? Maybe it's not the best thing to do, but it's not necessarily technically a ghiba because they can defend themselves or explain themselves. Okay? Now, namima, and does anybody know the difference between ghiba and namima? Namima, yeah, you know the difference?
Isn't the slander is still is false or something? Whereas ghiba can be true, something like that?
So namima is considered slander, and it can be true or false, as well as ghiba can be true or false. But namima, the definition is, it is ifsad bayna ithnain. Yani ifsad al-alaqa bayna ithnain. You are trying to corrupt the relationship between two people or two parties. That is actually the intention. It's a bit more severe. Because what namima is you go to Zayd and you say, "Hey Zayd, you know what Amr said about you? Amr said this, that, and the other thing." And it could be true, it could be false. Even if it's true, even if he did say that, but I'm going to go to Zayd and say, "Hey, you know what he said about you? I'm causing fitna, right?" And so now, Zayd gets all upset and says, "Well, Amr is this and Amr is that." And then I go back to Amr and I say, "Amr, you know what Zayd said about you?" So I'm causing a war between two people or two families or two tribes or two groups. This is namima. It is more serious and it is haram and it's considered a major sin. So it's higher than ghiba. The major sin right off the bat. Okay? Both are haram. And the Prophet Muhammad, he says, when he was walking with the Sahaba and they were walking by the grave, and he says that there are two people in the grave, he could hear them, that are being punished for what people consider small, but Allah considers great. And he said, "What are those two things?" They said, "What are those two things?" He says, "One kana mashiyan bin namima." One was walking, always making namima. Walking with people, always gossiping, backbiting, slandering, doing namima. People don't think it's a big deal, right? Look at the society around. Look at the entertainment industry. Look at television. It's ghiba, namima. It's the whole thing's based upon, hey, look what the celebrity here is doing, the celebrity there. They just they're just making fun of and teasing. Yani, the whole thing is on that. People want to hear gossip, right? They love gossip. So here he said people just walk and do namima and nobody thinks anything twice about it. He said, but that person was punished in the grave for it. And the second thing, some people consider small but it's big, is what's called istibrat min al-bawl, that somebody cleans, or somebody, what's the word, when they urinate, they remove all the urine first, and then wash themselves and clean themselves from it. So we know in the fiqh that if somebody urinates, that sometimes there's some left over, and that they or cough or clear the throat to kind of release the remaining amounts of urine. That is called istibrat min al-bawl. It's in the fiqh books. It's a way to make sure you don't, essentially, somebody doesn't leak on themselves, on their underwear, etc. after using the bathroom, that more doesn't come out later. So they kind of remove that there, and that process is sunnah. It is sunnah. It's called istibrat min al-bawl, and then they clean themselves and using water, washing their front private parts. This is all sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But some people don't even do that. And that was something that was considered small, but big to Allah, and that person was punished in the grave for leaving that. Okay? Within reason, of course, in moderation. And so this is ghiba, and then this is namima. And what we know about these two things is that they do not concern us usually, and so to not engage in them is better. In fact, if you had a choice of being silent, saying good, or saying bad, what is better? Right? So you guys know the hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Man yu'minu billahi wal yawm al-akhir falyaqul khayran aw liyasmut." Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, then he or she should say good or be silent. It's better to speak good than to be silent. But it's better to be silent than to speak evil. So if I have a choice here, and I'm going to say, if I'm going to speak good, it's better than you being quiet. You're going to give da'wah, you're going to teach, you're going to give a compliment. Prophet Muhammad says, kalima tayyiba sadaqah. A good word is sadaqah. If you say a good word, that's appropriate, to your Muslim brother, that's actually sadaqah. You're giving charity, complimenting, mashallah, praising in a good way, it's sadaqah. You're giving sadaqah. Talaqa wajh, sadaqah. A cheerful face, our Prophet Muhammad says is sadaqah. So even if, let's say, somebody asks you for money or something, and you can't give, or you don't want to give money, even if you have a cheerful face and you say a good word or make dua for them, that is a form of sadaqah. You are still giving sadaqah. It's just not material sadaqah. And at the very least, we should give food or something, and help somebody out. So this is what we should say. Speak good first, if not silence, and silence is better than speaking evil or speaking bad, as our Prophet Muhammad indicated. So this is leaving that which does not concern us, and how important that is in our tradition. So he says, and continues in the Sharh, Malik mentioned that it has reached him that it was said to Luqman, alayhi salam, how did you get to where you are now? How did the Prophet Luqman get to where he is now? In the commentary of this hadith by Shaykh Ibn Daqiq al-Eid. So he was asked that. He said, they meant the merit bestowed upon him by God. The rank that Luqman alayhi salam received as a prophet, messenger, how did he receive such a high status? He said, being true in my speech, right? I was true in my speech. Who else was true? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sadiq al-Amin, the trustworthy, the truthful. Handing back trust to the rightful owner. So if I got a trust, somebody gave me something, I gave it back to the rightful owner. This is something I was also true in. I gave back the trust. And leaving that which does not concern me. So if we as Muslims give rights back, trust back that people give us, we only speak about that which concerns us, and we are true in speech, then inshallah we will also have high ranks and status. Not of course like Luqman alayhi salam, but higher ranks and stations. It is also related from Al-Hasan that he said, of the signs that God Most High has forsaken a servant is to place his preoccupation in that which does not concern him. So if Allah leaves somebody, forsakes them, leaves them in mercy, leaves his mercy from them, what's the sign of that? That he places them and it occupies them with everybody else's affair. Oh, do you know what so-and-so is doing? So-and-so's affair, you know what that's about, So they start to get into gossip and so forth. A sign that Allah has forsaken them is he's made them occupied with everyone else. If you want to be occupied with something first and foremost, it should be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And if we look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life and his example and how he spoke, You guys know the Shamal, the characteristic of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would speak, he would pause between words, and he would speak very little. In fact, his silence was greater than his speech. And Aisha radiallahu anha, she says, when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would speak, you could count the words on one hand. Like, you would just say a few words, and mostly he was silent, and sometimes he would speak. And when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to emphasize something while speaking, he would say it 3 times. He would say the same thing 3 times. So it's obviously for da'wah and teaching and speaking, working and family, we speak, but the scholars say, whoever speaks a lot, like excessively, without need, ends up making a lot of mistakes. So speaking excessively too much can be sometimes a downfall and lead to somebody making a lot of mistakes in their speech and just in ghiba, namima, so forth. So he says, Abu Dawood said the basis of the sunnah in every discipline are 4 prophetic sayings, and he mentioned this saying among them, meaning this is one of the hadith that includes the disciplines of Islamic sciences. It comes down to 4 hadith. This is one of them that Abu Dawood says is extremely important, that we engage in that which concerns us and leave that which does not concern us. He gets into the perfection of faith. So if we look at the next hadith, which is on page 66, this is the 13th hadith. It says the perfection of faith. عن أبي حمزة أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه خادم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحبه لنفسه رواه البخاري ومسلم. So the next hadith is on the authority of Abu Hamza Anas bin Malik, may Allah be pleased with them, the servant of God's messenger said, this is Anas bin Malik, the one who served the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He reported that the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, said, one of you will not truly believe until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. So to have true iman and true faith, we have to love for our brothers and sisters in Islam that which we love for ourselves, if not better. This is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim, thus it has been mentioned in the rigorously authenticated collection of Bukhari for his brother without any doubt. The version rigorously authenticated collection of Muslim is his brother or neighbor, but the narrator was in doubt. So in Muslim, Sahih Muslim, if you guys don't know, Sahih Bukhari is the highest caliber of hadith literature in Islam, Bukhari. And then after Bukhari, it's Sahih Muslim. Okay? And in Muslim, it mentions this hadith and it says that it is the Muslim brother or your neighbor. And the Bukhari doesn't mention your neighbor, it just mentions your Muslim brother. And some scholars say that the narrator was in doubt, so they don't mention that part. So in Sahih Muslim, he mentions and your neighbor, but in Bukhari, it's your brother. And Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala says your brother or sister not only in faith, he mentions your brother or sister in humanity. If we say that we're all essentially the children of Adam alayhi salam, and we are part of the human family, then we should want good for one another, even non-Muslims, right? So he says, this hadith is not just saying that you want good for Muslim brothers and sisters like you want for yourself, you want good for even non-Muslim brothers and sisters in humanity, as you want for yourself. This is what Imam Nawawi says. And this applies, you want Islam for you, you want the salat, you want Saum, you want zakat, you want Jannah for you, you should also want that for others. Some ulama say that even if you want better for others than you want for yourself. This is what some will say. So to read the sharh, the explanation, he says, the scholar said it means that one shall not attain to perfect faith until one loves for his brother what one loves for himself. So what is perfect faith? It doesn't mean somebody's not Muslim, right? La yu'minu, he doesn't believe, meaning they don't have perfect faith. Doesn't mean they're not a Muslim. Until they love for their brother and sister that which they love for themselves. Otherwise, basic faith is the lot of those who do possess this trait. What is meant is that one loves acts of obedience and permissible things for one's brother. That you love acts of obedience and permissible things for one's brother or sister. It is not loving for your brother and sister to love haram for them. That is a form of actually oppressing your brother and sister. Some say, mercy, mercy. I want to have mercy on my brothers and sisters in Islam and in humanity. So I want to allow them to do haram, or I want them to do haram. No, that's a form of actually negligence and oppression. Yani we don't want people to do haram, nor do we allow them, in our own, like say, families, our own children, to do haram. and say we're having mercy on them and saying we're showing love. No, this is when the realm of permissibility, that you want acts of obedience and permissible things for others like you want for yourself. Okay? So the idea, because sometimes parents sometimes think, well, I'll just let my kids do XYZ, but XYZ is haram out of mercy and love for them. That's not mercy and love. That's harming your children. Okay? Think about it this way. You know how the parents, they teach us, look both ways before you cross the road, right? My mom taught me that when I was young, because one time I just ran out and I was going to hit my car in my house. No, make sure you look both ways. They might even spank you and say, look both ways next time. No. Why would they do that? Because they hate you? No, because they love you and they don't want you to get harmed. Even if they spank you, they want to teach you a lesson, Make sure you look both ways, because they love you, not because they hate you, right? So this is in the dunya for your life. What about the akhirah for your soul? Right? The akhirah for your soul is eternal. You want to get to Jannah, you got to say, hey, look both ways, meaning don't do haram, do halal. And make sure you do that. And inshallah, that will, obviously help benefit our kids and our families going forward. He said, what is meant is that one loves acts of obedience and permissible things from one's brother. This is evidenced by that which is mentioned in the version of Nisa'i, until he loves for his brother of good what he loves for himself. Shaykh Abu Ammar ibn Salah said, this sounds very difficult, if not impossible to achieve, but it is not so. This is because what this saying means is that the faith of any one of you will not be perfect until he loves for his brother in Islam what he loves for himself. The way to do this is to like his brother to have what he likes to have for himself in a way that does not infringe on his own benefit, so that the blessings that his brother enjoys is not less than the blessings he enjoys himself. So he's saying that, Ibn Salah, he's saying that it doesn't mean you have to want less for you, but he's saying the things that you like and enjoy for yourself, you want others to enjoy as well, your brothers in Islam, and even obviously if it's permissible things. So it's not so much, well, I don't want this, or I shouldn't have this, and so I want it for somebody else to have instead of me. It's more like, well, if you want things that you like for you, you should also want those things for other people. Which brings us to the ruling. Is it preferred to prefer your brother over you in the dunya and in the akhirah? So what's an example? Is there a preference, which is called ithara, for your brother in Islam to have over you, or for you to have over him in the dunya? So generally speaking, the preference is for you to have over your brother to have over you in the dunya. So for example, the Prophet Muhammad he was with one of the companions, and they went into a siwak tree. It's called the arak tree, which is known for the siwak. And the Prophet Muhammad grabbed two siwaks, which is the two stick, he used the sunnah, and one was crooked, bent, the other one was straight. And he gave the straight one to the Sahabi. And the Sahabi said, Ya Rasulullah, you're the messenger of Allah, you should take the straight one, the nice one, and I'll take the broken, the bent one. And the Prophet Muhammad says, no, that there are not two brothers that sit together except they will be asked in the akhirah, did I fulfill the right of my brother? They will not sit together except they will be asked in the akhirah, did I fulfill the right of my brother? And so he gave him the good one, right? And that might translate today to, well, you're hungry, your brother's hungry, you have king-size Snickers bar, and you have a little mini one, little mini Snickers bar. Which one do you give to your brother? You're both hungry. You say, it's mine, it's me first. Or do you prefer your brother over yourself? So this is the ithara in the dunya. It's better to prefer others over yourself. Okay? But what about the akhirah? This is a good one. The akhirah. Is it better to prefer your brother over yourself in the akhirah? Anybody know? So we're talking about in terms of ibadah. Yeah, sure. So, for example, I'll give an example. If somebody, you're praying in the front row, or there's a front row, there's a gap. Somebody leaves salat. Okay, you're there with your brother, and you're both gonna say okay, who wants to go? There's a gap in the first one. This is before salat starts. Okay, do you say, go ahead, brother? I prefer you over myself. Take the front row spot. We're not talking about your brothers like some Adam or something or a Hafiz. We're talking about just you and your brother. community member. There's a spot open. Should I prefer you over that spot, or should I take it?
Compete to do good deeds.
Huh?
I'll take it.
I take it? You say prefer your brother?
Yeah. You should compete to do good deeds, right?
Yeah, you should. وفي ذلك فليتنافس المتنافسون. It is in this, meaning the spring, the عيني يشربوا بها المقربون, the spring that they drink from in Jannah, they compete over these things. They compete over these things, right? So competition for the akhirah is good, it's praiseworthy. Competition in the dunya is blameworthy, right? Competing who can accumulate more than the other. Like squirrels trying to collect as much nuts as they can. Whoever has the most nuts is the best, right? That's kind of how it works. Right? So competition on the dunya is not praiseworthy, right? Doesn't mean people can't have nice things, but it's not a praiseworthy thing. Competition in the akhirah is praiseworthy. So preferring your brother over yourself in the dunya is better. But preferring yourself over your brother in the akhirah is better. So actually, you take that spot. So if it's like, if you're like equal in knowledge, for example, and there's that spot that opens up, you should know, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it. Because you're competing over the akhirah. And you're competing over the akhirah, it's better to prefer yourself. Okay? Now, we're not talking about like sadaqah and stuff like that. We're talking about like acts of worship. And things like this, it's better for you to be first. And this is more praiseworthy, right? And so, this is obviously what the better ought to be. So, the way to do this is to for your brother without infringing on yourself. So you don't have to infringe on yourself or remove your own blessings. This is quite easy and within reach of the person who possesses a sound heart. It is difficult only for the corrupted heart. So corrupted people have a hard time preferring others over themselves in the dunya, and they have a hard time loving for other people what they love for themselves. They just love for themselves. That's it. They prefer them over everyone and only love for myself as if I'm the center of the universe, me, myself, and I, and no one else. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Wallahi la akhafu an tushriku min ba'di." I swear to Allah, I don't fear that you will have shirk after me, that you will worship other than Allah. He made it very clear. It's in the Quran Sunnah that there's only one God, and He is the messenger and slave of Allah. He said, I don't fear. Yeah, you have Muslims today, some that, shirk, bid'ah, everything's shirk and bid'ah. That's all they worry about. That's all they're afraid of. The Prophet Muhammad himself, he says, I swear to God, I do not fear that you will commit shirk after me. That's what he said during his time. Because it's so clear and laid out that it can't, nobody's going to say, there's two Allahs. So then he says, وَلَكِنْ أَخَافُ أَن تُبْسِدُوا عَلَيْكُمْ الدُّنْيَا كَمَا بُسِطَتْ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ فَتَتَنَافَسُوهَا كَمَا تَنَافَسُوا الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ فَتُهْلِكُكُمْ كَمَا أَهْلَكَتْهُمْ. That I fear that the dunya will become open to you, the life of this world, the material items and temptations, and you will compete over it like those who competed before you, and it will destroy you as it destroyed them. That's what the Prophet Muhammad was really worried about. So he says, may God save us all and our brothers. Abu Zinad said, the outward meaning of this saying gives the impression of equality, but its reality is preference. This is because a person likes to be better than everybody else. This is the nafs, the lower self, the ego, that needs to be purified. I want to be better than everybody else. Okay? That doesn't mean we don't work hard. That doesn't mean we don't do well in school. That doesn't mean we don't do well in work. It just means that I want to outcompete and be better than everybody else because I'm the best, because of me, not because, Allah blessed me in a certain way, but because me, myself, and I have got to where I am by myself. This is problematic, right? Because it's all from Allah anyway, not from you. Nothing's from us. So in this sense, he says that Abu Zinad is saying that people, the nafs itself, loves for it to be first and to be better than everyone else. One of my teachers was saying in Yemen, he was asked, how did such and such person get to such high status and rank? The huge alim, pious friend of Allah, wali. And he said, how did he get to such a high station and rank? He says, that's because, he said, because he loved that his, you could say cohorts, his classmates, that they were superior than him. So he says, somebody asked, how does one surpass his classmates or his colleagues? He says that he wants the colleagues to surpass him. So when you want others to surpass you and be better than you, then that is when you actually surpass them. It's the opposite of what people think. That if you want to be the best, and don't get me wrong, the Prophet Muhammad he says, كَتَبَ اللَّهُ إِحْسَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Allah has written ihsan, excellency, precision, goodness on everything. He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْعَبْدِ إِذَا عَمِلَ عَمَلًا أَنْ يُتْقِنَهُ. That if Allah truly, He loves a servant, that when he does something, he does it well. When you do something, you do it right. Whether you're at school, whether you're at work, whether it's your family, you're at the masjid, you do something, you do it well, you do it good. Allah loves that servant. Okay, as long as it's halal. Tamam. So that doesn't negate this. But what he's saying here is that that when the nafs itself wants to be better than others, it thinks that through my own doing, my own knowledge, education, experience, that I am somehow superior or better than other people. And I must remain the best. That's the nafs. Okay? But what he's saying is one should want others. That doesn't mean they don't work hard. That doesn't mean they don't have ihsan. But they should want others to surpass them and be better than them. And by doing so, it will actually make you better. Spiritually and inwardly and outwardly. And so this doesn't, now again, there's context here. There's context here because it doesn't mean that in certain contexts we don't tell who we are. Can you imagine if you're like going to a job interview at work and they're asking you about your skills and your experience and your education, and you're like, I'm nothing, I'm zero, I've not done anything, everybody else is better than me. They're not gonna hire you. They're gonna say, okay, we'll hire everybody else then. Right? There's a place and a time for everything. Okay? And when you're like in that context, at that place and time, then you tell them your experience, your skills, your knowledge, your education. It's fine, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're boasting. You're just being factual and true. Here's the condition though. You have to be humble before Allah. Second condition, that is all from Allah, not from you. Third condition, that you're being honest and factual. You're not exaggerating, you're not boasting, you're just telling them your experience and your background, okay? And you're not lying, right? Fourth, you're not lying. So you gotta be true, you cannot lie. You have to be factual and honest, accurate, and you have to attribute that at least inwardly to Allah, and you have to believe that that is something that Allah has blessed you with, and you're not boasting and bragging about it, you're just merely telling the person the truth about your background and your history. And that's fine in that context, because they're trying to hire you and you want them to hire you, so you have to tell them why. Okay? So then he continues and he says that for his brother he likes for himself, it means he becomes among those who have excelled over others. Do you not see that the one who likes to see justice done regarding his rights and wrongs committed against him? So when he perfects his faith and his brother has with him a right that needs to be restored or an iniquity that it requires setting right, he hastens to make sure that justice is done even if it's against him or he finds it hard to do so. So one of the ways that you love for your brother more than what you love for yourself is that if you ever harmed your brother, if there's an injustice or iniquity done, that you're quick to correct it. You come quickly to correct it, to fix it, to restore it, even if it's against yourself, and even if it's hard for you to do, you still do it because you love for them what you love for yourself. You wouldn't like somebody to harm you. You wouldn't like somebody to oppress you. You wouldn't like somebody to remove a right from you or to harm you. So then don't do it to others. And if you do, because we're human, then make sure you rectify that. You restore that back. And that's what he's saying. And even if restoring so means you're going against yourself, or someone you love because you're doing the right thing. It is reported that Fudayl ibn Iyad said to Sufyan ibn Uyayna, if you want people to like you, you have not done well by God. Oh, if you want people to like you, you have not done well by God. Why? You should want Allah to like you. Who cares what people think? Somebody who just all they care about is what people think and what people want, and they want everybody to like them, they're going to end up compromising their values, their beliefs, their principles. It is not what people think about you. It is what Allah and His Messenger ﷺ think about you. What does Allah love and like? Even if all the people in the world hate it. And even all the people in the world love something, but Allah hates it, then you should hate that thing because Allah hates it. We love what Allah loves and we hate what Allah hates. And it does not matter what time and place or civilization or people, society or culture says otherwise. And that's really important because people want to fit in, especially kids. They want to fit in, they want to be cool, they want to be popular, so they're willing to compromise their faith and tradition to do so. So don't care about people liking you. Okay? If Allah loves you, He will eventually make the people love you. You guys know the hadith with Jibreel alayhi salam? That if Allah loves somebody, He announces to Jibreel alayhi salam that so-and-so, truly I love him. And then Jibreel alayhi salam, he tells the rest of the angels, Allah loves so-and-so, so truly I love him. And then the angels announce, and he becomes accepted on the earth, that the person becomes accepted, approved and accepted by people. Eventually, people will love you and come around if Allah loves you. And even if they don't, who cares? As long as Allah loves you. If Allah enters you in His Jannah because He loves you, and people who don't like you don't go to Jannah, then what's the point? So he says, you have not done well by God if you want people to like you. How about if you want to be less? If you want them to be less than you, how about if you want people to be less than you? That's even worse. And then the last paragraph he says, a scholar said, one understands from this prophetic saying that the believer with his fellow believer is like one single soul. So the believer is like a single soul with another believer. They are almost as if they share one soul. He should therefore love him for what he loves for himself, insofar as they are a single soul. So if you're a single soul with another believer, then you should want for them what you want for yourself because you share the same soul. What's done to him is like what's done to you. And what's done to you is like what's done to him. So you want the same thing or better because you share a single soul. Why would he say single soul? As related in another prophetic saying, the believers, a hadith, the believers are like one single body. All the believers, 1.8 million Muslims in the world, are like one single body. If any limb of it suffers, the rest of the body contracts fever and remains sleepless. So any part of the ummah that suffers, the rest of the body contracts fever and is sleepless. This could be Muslims suffering in different countries, even in this country, around the world. There's oppression, there's famine, there's drought, there's harm. But if any one of our ummah suffers or is in pain, then we should feel that pain. And that's what it means to be a believer. The word ummah comes from the word means mother. It's like we share one mother. We're one big family, worldwide Muslim community. And if anybody's in pain, we feel that. So just like your body, if you have a toothache, your whole body feels that. How does your whole body? You can't sleep at night. It's like you get a fever, you get sick. You can't sleep at night if you get like an infection in your tooth. And it affects your whole life and affects your whole day and your work and everything else. Okay? Just one little tooth in your whole body. One thing misaligns, your whole body feels it. Similarly, if one part or one person in our ummah is in pain, we should all feel that. And like that, the Prophet Muhammad says, like one body, any limb suffers, the rest of the body contracts fever and sleeplessness because of how difficult it is for that person they know that somebody in the ummah is in pain and somebody is struggling. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and love us and cherish us and honor us and raise us and forgive us, inshallah, and make us of those who speak in that which concerns us and deal with that which concerns and involves us directly or our families. And may He make us of those who love for our brothers and sisters in Islam and in humanity that which we love for ourselves. Those are the two hadith, alhamdulillah, that we finished for today. And inshallah, next Wednesday, as we know, we have the ICOB Mihrab class 40 days of Imam Nawawi every Wednesday at 8 after Isha, so after 8 p.m. Till about 9 p.m. right about now, inshallah. And we cover 2 hadith this time. We cover 1 or 2 hadith every class, inshallah. And so we'll have class next Wednesday, and it will be about the protection of life. The protection of life, which is going to be hadith 14, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, everyone. Barakallahu feekum. Allah bless and reward you all. Al-Fatiha. Allah yarzuqna al-manafa wa khasana al-buda wa husna ta'lima. وانتظرت الهدى ويسلم بذلك قوم نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم من اللهم امين وشيخنا وذوي الحقوق علينا من اهلت به الفاتحه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين اياك نعبد واياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين انعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين امين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك جزاك الله خير السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. جزاك الله خير.